Welcome everyone to episode 13 of the Phoenix Report. I'm Jack Connor. Today I have a guy on who, if those of you who have listened to any of my reaction podcasts, especially the wrestling related ones, you've already heard this guy on there. And, he's one of those guys, like, I was hoping to have him for like a one-on-one interview before we started the reaction things, for the wrestling pay-per-views and the wrestling news that came up. I definitely, even as I said from day one, not only am I a music fan, I'm a big wrestling fan as well. So obviously that's where those episodes came from. Well, anyway, this is a guy who who if you've, or even if you haven't heard of him before, I'd like to take you guys back to 2006, specifically December 16th, 2006 is when I met this guy. I was going to a concert in Seminole, Florida, at a club called Boomers, which is unfortunately no longer there. I was going to see one of my favorite bands, Fozzy, which of course features WWE legend Chris Jericho on lead vocals. It's and now don't let that fool you and the silly name fool you. Fozzy is an excellent band, and they're still together now, and they're better than they've ever been. They're definitely more successful than they had ever been, but I was going there for a couple reasons. For one, to see Fozzy. The second one was to see my friend's band. My friend was in a band called Consinity, and they were opening for Fozzy. So that was another one of my main reasons for going there, beyond just being a huge fan of the band. It was definitely an interesting show. I mean, it's always cool to see one of your favorite bands up close, in a club setting like that. It's, it's sort of a rare opportunity, at least it was for me, to get that close to a band like Fozzy. And I was right up there in the front row. I was going nuts, singing, jumping up and down, singing along to every song. And at one point, the band launched into their cover of the Crocus song, Eat the Rich, which Fozzy actually recorded on their first album back in 2000, which was mainly covers, but a few originals here and there. Well, anyways, the band launched into Eat the Rich, and there was one segment of the song where Chris Jericho would, and he would do this for a lot of the songs. He would like kind of hold the mic out to the crowd and have the crowd sing into it, and even get close to people who wanted to sing or scream a particular line. And at one point, the mic found its way to me because, apparently at one point during Eat the Rich, I was, jumping up and going down, and I should say I was jumping up and down and singing along, and like I really knew all the words to it. And I don't know if I grabbed the mic without realizing it, or if Chris handed me the mic. I'd like to think he handed me the mic, because I wouldn't want to grab something out of his hand. I'd like to think I'm a little bit more polite than that. But at one point, Chris saw that I was singing the words, and I was really singing them, not just like yelling them. I wasn't off key, and so I was like kind of singing it, and Chris actually literally pulled me up on stage, and he and I finished the song together with the band. And it was crazy. I mean, there were so many people in the crowd there who knew me, who were just going nuts. They were like, oh my God, I can't believe Jack is on stage with Fozzy. And it was just one of the coolest experiences of my life, because I got to sing with one of my favorite bands, and it was completely impromptu. And when I finished the song, I got off stage, and there was this guy standing next to me there. He had a Fozzy t-shirt on. He's like, hey man, that was great. I took a bunch of pictures, and here's my number. I can email the pictures to you, because again, this is 2006. Not everyone had a smartphone. I think I just was rocking the flip phone at that point. And so he had his digital camera there, and we exchanged phone numbers and email, and he sent me the pictures, and they turned out great. And to this day, they're still on my Facebook profile. So in the list of my credits, when I can say that I've performed as a guest performer with Fozzy, I have the pictures to prove it. And the guy who ended up taking those pictures was a guy named Brian Connolly. And he was someone who I ended up striking up a good friendship with because we were, not only were we fans of Fozzy, but we were huge wrestling fans. This guy was just a wrestling fanatic, like I couldn't believe. And we were also both really big comedy fans. And this was a guy who he's always been just like one of the funniest dudes I've ever met. And sometimes he could say some outrageous stuff, but he's one of those guys where I could tell he's very passionate about comedy in addition to music and wrestling. And he's a guy who's kind of managed to, sort of dabble in all three of those art forms. At one point, he was a referee for Florida Championship Wrestling, which later became NXT. At the time, that was WWE's developmental territory, and of course now it's known as NXT and based in Orlando. But at the time, it was based in Tampa, where we were both living at the time, the Tampa Bay area. So here's a guy. He was at one point a referee for FCW. He is a drummer and a guitarist. He and his brother and a bunch of their friends have been in a band called the Schmelts, and they're a comedy rock band. These guys have been together for the better part of 20 years. And granted, they only perform maybe about once or twice a year, or once every couple of years, but these guys have been together for a long, long time. And he's also been an aspiring stand-up comic for a long time. I know for a while he's worked at Side Splitters, and not necessarily as a comic, but as part of the staff there. And I know he's done a few open mics. He hasn't really quite taken the leap to really go after stand-up comedy, but I really think he should, because I know it's something he's very passionate about, and whether that's something he wants to do or is going to do. I don't know, but either way, when I told him I was doing a podcast, he had said, he's like, yeah, I really want to get into podcasting as well. So I'm hoping that his exposure, or at least his, experience being on the Phoenix Report, on the reaction pieces, and I should say the reaction episodes, hopefully he's maybe getting the bug a little bit to go into podcasting, because I think he's a funny, unique guy, and I think this would be a good forum for him to to express his opinions on things, and just to kind of work on material. Whether he goes into stand-up comedy or not, I think he has a really good mind for comedy and wrestling and music, and those are all three big things that we share in common. So now that I've kind of talked this guy up a little bit and told you how I know him, and some of you may know him from the reaction episodes, but I wanted to get him on here as a one-on-one thing to explain how we know each other and to have a more in-depth conversation about that stuff. And who knows what we're going to talk about, but I appreciate you guys sticking around for the ride. So with all that being said, please welcome to the Phoenix Report the Bobby Heenan to my Gorilla Monsoon, the Jerry Lawler to my Jim Ross, Mr. Brian Connolly.
Woo! Yeah!
Thank you.
I did not want you to stop putting me over like that.
Dude, I will put you over clean in the middle. Pin me,
really
pay me.
I was really enjoying hearing somebody just talk about me for, an extended period of time.
Well, yeah, I
like it, man. I'm into it.
Normally, I know how much you like to talk about you, so it's so I figured it would be music to your ears, but I'm really glad that we finally are getting to sit down and just kind of talk, sort of on a one-on-one deal. I love having you as part of the panel for the sort of the unofficial wrestling panel that I have. It's usually
cool, man. Yeah, it's a cool concept, and I enjoy doing it.
Well, I almost modeled it after your typical, morning radio show. Not that that's what I'm doing or necessarily trying to do, but
yeah, not nearly as obnoxious with all the, noise that goes on in the zoo crew in the morning.
Oh, right. Well, which some of that is fun, like because I love the Preston and Steve show out of Philly, and it's probably a little bit of a zoo crew, but they're just hysterically funny.
Well, I just re-listened to our Piper tribute, and it was a little off the rails and chaotic, but like we said, that's how Piper
right
wanted it.
Right,
So,
our loving tribute to
I think that's better than giving some sad, somber, just reading of everything he did. We made it interesting. I think.
Well, I mean, I think we have a pretty interesting group dynamic because you and me on there, it's like I said, you're sort of the the Bobby Heenan to my Gorilla Monsoon.
I'm a natural born heel all the way.
Exactly.
And you're Babyface, you're the Sean Mooney, and I'm the Lord Alfred Hayes.
Exactly.
He's
your idol, isn't he, Lord Alfred Hayes?
Didn't know it at the time, but I don't know. Idols, I don't know if we can throw that word around.
Well, he's certainly one of our recurring mentions.
He is my Lord and Savior, Alfred Hayes.
He's your personal savior, I think.
And I don't need to divulge the inside information as to why I keep mentioning him.
Well, I've Googled it and I've heard the stories that Roddy Piper's told. And
yeah. Oh, and Roddy Piper, man, like we've already established, is one of my all-time favorites.
Of course.
Warrior, Savage, Bobby Heenan, of course, and like I said, Gorilla Monsoon, who was my grandfather, taught me like words. Like that's a prominent proboscis he has there. Like what?
Like what's a miscarriage of justice?
I knew what a patella was when I was like 8 years old. I'd be talking about the patella and the tendon and
right.
Dude,
it was like anatomy lessons.
And Jesse Ventura was cool too. I enjoyed Saturday
Gorilla.
Night Man with Vince and Jesse. Man, like that's the type of stuff that got me into wrestling. Was Saturday Night's Main Event, and like '87, right around the time is build up to WrestleMania 3. That's when I got sucked in, man. 'Cause Hogan and Andre, like Savage and Steamboat. Are you kidding?
I was going to ask you about that. If you could remember a particular point in your childhood where it clicked for you, if you could remember a particular moment that got you hooked.
It's racking my brain trying to think of the exact what was the first thing I saw. I actually know. Surprisingly, my brother was watching. My brother was 2.5 years older than me, so anything he did, I did.
Right.
He found a way to amuse us both. He started flipping through the channels. Back then, he was a huge Yankees fan, and I was a huge Mets fan. It was like 86, because we lived in New York. We grew up in Long Island.
Right.
And whatever reason, man, the Mets won the World Series that year in 86. I flipped out. It was like October 86. Loved it. Realized it's never going to get any better than that, and stopped watching baseball altogether.
you just knew it right then.
And I was like, I'm done.
How old were you at this point?
6 years old.
You just knew at 6 years old. You're like, yep, it's peaked.
Yeah, it's
I'm
weird.
over it.
That's how I remember it. It's like October or November, whenever the World Series ended that year. That was the infamous Boston Red Sox. Bill Buckner missed, whatever. I don't know why I'm talking about baseball.
Right. It's
Darryl Strawberry.
Right. Well, you know me. I mean, I'm just nuts about baseball, so.
Whatever.
No, I mean, I like baseball just fine. I just don't know a lot about it.
It's sad how much more I know about wrestling than baseball. I hear dudes rally off statistics on dudes like RBIs and home runs, and I'm like, did you know WrestleMania 6 was at the Sky Dome in Toronto?
Get out of here, nerd.
Yes. So, all right. The World Series ends like end of October. The first thing, I was just talking to my brother the other day, that I could vividly remember was us watching Saturday Night's Main Event. And I just went on the network recently. I saw it was like January 87. So it makes sense that I was done with baseball, and then this other thing pops up. And the first match I remember seeing was Hogan versus Orndorff in a steel cage.
Wow.
And they both went down separate sides of the steel cage and feet hit at the exact same time. That old, I don't know if that's a dusty finish or what do you call that?
Right. I don't know. It's a time tested finish.
Man, from this point on, January 87, I think the first pay-per-view I ever watched was WrestleMania 4. Wow. When Macho Man wrestled 3 or 4 times in one night. Like I remember being with a group of friends, my brother included, watching that, and Like, I was a huge Macho Man fan more than a Hogan fan, like, always. Macho Man and Ted DiBiase, all those guys. They're so colorful back then, man.
They
like,
really were. They really were. Now, were your parents fans of wrestling at all, or was it mainly from your brother?
My mom would watch with me. She had her favorites. She liked Roddy Piper, Bret Hart, all the dudes that were like, she thought were cute.
Right.
Terry Von Erich.
Yeah.
They all had the same look.
Good looking dudes.
Yeah. So she'd sit there next to me, and there's actually a funny story once when I was like 9 or 10 years old. I was like sick and laying in bed next to my mom, and she was pretending to be interested in wrestling, and she still remembers it to this day.
Mm-hmm.
That it was like Saturday night's main event was on, and she rolled over at one point, and she was like, "Oh, did Ultimate Warrior or Macho Man wrestle yet?" And I was like, "Yeah, they did." She's like, "Did they wrestle in the front of the ring or the back of the ring?" And I looked over at her, I'm like, "What?" Because she was talking in her sleep. Oh. And like to this day, when I talk about watching wrestling, she always makes that joke of like, "Were they in the front of the ring or the back of the ring?" Stupid, man. I don't know why I just told that story.
Wow, that's interesting. I'm learning a lot about Mrs. Connolly tonight.
Yeah.
But
what's that? Yeah, she kind of liked wrestling a little bit back then.
Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting, like, because, like, my parents weren't necessarily fans of it. Like, I think, my dad watched, like, growing up in Philly, like, he would watch, like, Gorilla Monsoon and, like, Mr. Fuji on TV because they were wrestlers, back in the day when he was a kid. But, I mean, they always kind of got into it sort of, like, circuitously through me. Like my mom would kind of, and this would be like years later, like she'd be watching it even after like I already knew it was a work, that it was entertainment. Like she would still get a little bit mad at some of the bad guys.
My dad loved to come in when I was watching pay-per-views or whatever and just sit down and be like, it's fake, right? He was that guy.
Just, shut up, Dad, it's not.
I was like a kid, like 8 or 9, just like, what are you talking about? You clearly hit him right there.
Right.
Like, why is he bleeding? Like,
yeah.
He didn't really get hurt. I didn't understand. And I held off on all that stuff, man. Santa Claus, Easter Bunny, Tooth Fairy, until I was like 10 years old, man. Everyone in class was like, Santa's your parents, right? Like, I'm sorry for the spoilers out there for anybody listening.
You're like, you shut your mouth.
So, I don't know, man. I still am not sure at times what's a work, what's a shoot.
Right.
What's a rib?
It really is tough because you get so many guys, like, even to this day, who just like buy into their own gimmick a little bit too much, and it's like, okay, you guys are taking it a little bit too seriously.
Yeah, man. For sure, dude. I think the Iron Sheik's got it all figured out, man.
Right.
That guy's living his gimmick, but in a good way. It's like, I
guess so. Like, the guy's been in the country for the better part of 50 years right now, and still. I mean, I wonder, does he really struggle that much with the language?
I didn't appreciate him back in the early 80s when I got into wrestling. He just seemed like some generic, like, whatever. Like, but the more I started paying attention to that guy, man, like, he's like borderline crazy, borderline genius. You're not sure which one.
He's legitimately nuts. I mean, I think any of his Twitter rants, if that's really him, has proven it.
Right. Oh no, I don't know if it's him. I saw a documentary on Netflix saying that it's some dude that works with him, but I think it comes out of his mouth.
Right. He probably just transcribes it word for word, and
yeah. But he's got just a funny. Well, he's actually one of my comedic influences, the Iron Sheik.
Really.
I don't know. So let's put that out there.
Why not? I mean, he's definitely entertaining. I don't know whether he means to be, but he's one of those guys unintentionally hilarious.
Yeah, man, I've always enjoyed like the humorous aspect of growing up watching wrestling too. Like, I knew it was ridiculous.
Right,
like,
right.
Nobody had to come in and tell me like Brutus the Barber Beefcake was a ridiculous person with his like, I loved it. Jake the Snake Roberts and Earthquake and Tugboat. It was all silly shit, but
like gobbledygooker, man. That's all I gotta say.
Dude, that was my favorite pay-per-view ever. Survivor Series 1990 was amazing. I mean, and I'm not really on the network watching all that old shit because I watched it and I had them on VHS forever. Now it's like, what's the point?
Right. But it is cool to at least have that stuff available on demand, that it's there.
Yeah, like those cards were so stacked with everyone on the roster that was amazing versus what they do now in a 4-hour show, and they struggle to put in like 8 or 9 matches, and it's, I don't know, man, like the timing is off or something now versus then, like just feels a lot more different. I don't know. I don't necessarily think it was better though, because
you know what?
It's hard to rewatch.
You know what to me is one of the big pet peeves? Whenever I hear guys, like I'll hear guys say that the roster is thin. I'm like, no, it's not. You've got
not counting NXT, because there's an endless supply. We now know of dudes to be called up at any time.
Well, I mean, think about that. They have a lot of guys and girls under contract. It's like, oh, well, we just don't have a lot of main event stars right now. I'm like, well, create some main event stars then. That's like your job to do that.
To be putting much more emphasis on both divas and tag teams, which is cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, now there's kind of a floundering mid-card title theme even where...
But it's not because... Right, but it's not because there's like a lack of talent out there. I mean, I almost wonder, it's like if they don't see these guys as like main event potential or whatever, or something they can work with, it's like, why do you bother hiring them then? It's a strange...
Well, they're being retrained from what they've already been taught. You know, there's a certain style that you're being taught.
Right.
You know, I think everybody knows that. But it's also like character development, cutting promos, you know, your mic skills, which a lot of dudes are lacking on.
Yeah.
Because, you know, shyness, man. Like, you know, stage fright. Like, I get it. You get in a ring, and there's kids yelling at you, and you have a mic in your hand, and you just blank out completely. Like, you're just trying to remember what they told you to say. And I don't know, I think back then, like, Piper was just shooting from the hip naturally.
Yeah.
Like you could tell, it wasn't scripted.
Yeah, no one was giving Roddy a script. Come on.
But not everybody's Roddy.
Yeah.
And some of these dudes were trying to come in and talk to these guys. And I honestly think it's just a weird generational thing where guys are just like complacent with where they are, and they don't really strive to, they just kind of ride it out. You know, like, oh, this is what I am. You know, I'm a mid-card guy. And although, you know, the Zack Ryder situation was unique in that the guy tried to make a name for himself and they kind of cut his legs out from under him. But I didn't even understand any of that. But
yeah, I think that's, you know, people look at me like I'm crazy, but I think that Zack Ryder is one of the biggest missed opportunities in the business. I mean, you had a guy who was legitimately over.
Yeah, they were chanting his name. They gave him a title push and stuff, and something happened there.
They just... I think they just resented the fact that he got over on his own. It's like, how dare you do that?
They don't want guys to make a name for themselves, and I think Vince has a serious issue with like things he created versus Sting he didn't create, so he doesn't treat him like a priority, kind of like...
Yeah,
I don't know.
Mean, it's just it's ego and it's hubris. You know,
he cannot further solidify how much they beat WCW. Like, we get it, man.
Right.
Like, I'm proud of them. I was a WWF guy all the way. But it's like, stop beating us over the head with that. You won the Monday Night Wars. Like, that's all they keep talking about, man. It's like, focus on what you're doing now versus what you used to do. Cause
right,
a lot of work.
And you know, it's not like that was a major accomplishment. WCW just happened to suck the last couple of years.
Yeah, they kind of put themselves out of business. It was like they committed suicide, and you're bragging about the fact that you beat them. Like,
it's like, hey,
Turner and Eric Bischoff were not the two guys to be, and Vince Russo and, you know, all those guys, man.
It's like, hey, we're not as bad as these guys. Hey, we won. It's like, okay.
I think it was made evident, like, when they went to WCW, right in the boom period of the Attitude Era. They left WWF, went to WCW, and shit, I almost made me think like Vince sent them there to put it out of business. And then he sent them to TNA to put them out of business. And like everything they touch turns to shit. I'm a Jim Cornette guy, man. I listen to him rail on Russo for long enough, and I feel like I want like Vic Venom. I can't stand that guy, man. He's awful.
Oh man, not that Cornette's that much better. I mean,
well, that's debatable. Yeah, he's funny, and he's another comedic influence.
He is funny, but he's also just a ridiculous human being. One of those guys who takes it way too seriously.
Yeah, for sure. And he's young, man. I looked it up. He's only like 50, 51. I thought he was a lot older because of how passionate he is about. He seems like such an old, timey guy. Like,
well, he's just
around
he's crotchety and curmudgeonly.
yeah, and, traditionalist. Most Southerners live and die by being, traditional, but you have to adapt eventually. That was Vince Russo's thing, was they'd go back and forth on each other because it was like tradition versus we got to keep up with the times and make things rated R, and
right.
Sonny and Sable get more attention than whatever. Yeah, it was cool. Man, I was happy. Sonny.
I'll tell you, there's probably not a week goes by where I don't get like a text from you about like Sonny or Virgil or like stuff they're doing on Twitter. I'm like,
dude, these are great. These are great times. Like, you can communicate with people you grew up watching. And I'm kind of new to Twitter, man. I've been on Facebook where I don't really I correspond with people I know. Right. Now I'm off like talking to random strangers on Twitter, but like, it's awesome when you get a retweet or a favorite from somebody. It makes you feel, right. I don't know. It's like makes you feel special. Sunny retweeted something of mine the other day that I wrote about her.
Oh God, what did you write about her?
Well, I'm obviously putting her over, man. I'm pro Sunny.
Nice.
Everybody's against what she does. I don't want to. And Virgil, man. Virgil's like taking that infamous picture of him sitting alone at the wrestling superstar table signing autographs. They kind of ran with that, man. And now he's like a Twitter celebrity, and he was trying to raise $1 million for himself just to be.
Yeah. Like, what was that?
Oh, they're entertaining, man. Virgil, Iron Sheik, Sonny, Jim Cornette.
He's just being a dick. It's like, hey, if you guys want to give me $1 million, like, I'm not going to pay you back. I'm not going to do anything. Just here you go. Give me money.
I mean,
for nothing.
People are watching these shows on TLC about like people with strange addictions and midgets and giants and 600-pound people, and I go on Twitter and I see what old wrestlers are up to. And
well,
they're entertaining. Got their own source of entertainment. Mine's a little off, but
well. What do you gotta have your interests and passions in life. So it's
dude. It's one of those things where it dropped off for a few years because nobody liked it. I still watched it. I just didn't tell anybody that I did in those times.
Right.
Like, it was one of those weird kayfabe things. And then there's a boom period in 97, 98 with the NWO, and everybody watched wrestling all of a sudden. It was cool to talk about, but. Dude, I've literally watched wrestling every Monday night since Raw started. If not, I've recorded it, caught up on it. A few here and there, I was like, I don't need to see that. But I've been real loyal and dedicated to
You
WWF.
really have been. And for as much as we rip on it and for as much as we make fun of it, we do keep tuning in,
Yeah, it's like the girl you make fun of when you're kid that you think is pretty.
What are you talking about?
I don't know. A weird analogy.
Yeah, like what?
Well, I don't know.
Like, what chicks are you harassing? Come on.
Let's not promote that you should harass a girl to get.
No, you shouldn't.
Like.
But yeah, I mean, there's not like a week that goes by or a couple days where I don't get some like random text talking about Lord Alfred or Man Mountain Rock from you just to get a laugh out of me.
You're one of the few people that would know what the hell I'm talking about. Other people are like, what? Who? Even like certain other wrestling fan friends of mine. I'm way too obscure with my references, I guess.
Right. Well, that's one of the reasons why I have you on the panel, because I think we have a really unique, dynamic with it, where it's like
everybody needs to go out and get the WWE encyclopedia because everybody's in there. You'll learn about them all. You can't really appreciate because you didn't watch their some of these guys that I grew up watching, like the Red Rooster and Max Moon.
Wow.
And Bastion Booger / Friar Ferguson.
Oh my God.
Battle Cat and Techno Team 2000.
Oh yes.
New Generation, man. I stuck with it. I was like, no,
really
it's gonna get better. It's gonna get better. Like,
you wrote it out. You wrote out the storm.
So at this point, when people are like, dude, that's it. I'm not gonna keep watching. Like, you know better.
Right.
Like, keep checking in on. Well, let's just see what they're up to. I was always like,
yeah. I mean, you survived TL Hopper, you know,
God, yeah. I can endure anything. I can endure Sheamus and Randy Orton a few thousand more times.
I know, right? Like, come on.
For all the TL Hopper and Goon matches I've sat through, the Goon.
Yeah, I mean, Akeem the African Dream.
Yeah, man, the Jive Soul Bro. Slick.
Yes.
Love Slick. Come on.
It's so good. I mean,
I could just name wrestlers all night if you want.
I mean, that's most of our conversations anyway. But like it won't even be a premise. You'll just text me these guys' names, and I'll just laugh. I'm like, yeah,
doesn't matter. I know it's not bothering you. You're just
it really doesn't. I'm like, yeah.
Sadly, like we occasionally send each other notifications that so and so has died. TMZ report. Right. I mean, that's a bummer too, man. Like, but I've been keeping up with that stuff since like '98, and it's kind of ruined wrestling in many ways. Where it used to be like a surprise when something would happen. Now I read about it months in advance, and
yeah,
I don't know, man. Yeah, I grew up subscribing to like WWF magazine as a kid. I was super nerdy into it, like just reading up.
I had the subscriptions too, man.
And I remember specifically the first issue I ever got was the one with Ken Patera on the cover.
Wow.
And August '87. So yeah, now I'm kind of partial to Ken Patera. Nobody talks about Ken Patera, man. It's weird.
I don't know anything about Ken Patera. I'll be honest with you.
Former Olympian. He was in WWF in like '87. I don't know. It's just weird the amount of, and Billy Jack Haynes is another guy nobody talk about.
Wow.
He's got this lawsuit against Vince McMahon right now, but he's one of these conspiracy theory guys who's got, a list of dead wrestlers that were all involved in some kind of conspiracy. I haven't seen it yet, but like old crazy guys from the '80s.
Probably just hanging out with Jesse a lot.
Maybe, yeah. I like Jesse. I like anybody that speaks out. Those shoot interviews and stuff are always good, but some of those guys burn way too many bridges, like Paul Roma, and they just go in too hard on this guy's a dick, this guy's an asshole, this guy.
Right. And it's like, well, it couldn't have been all bad, Yeah,
it's very easy it's like when you look back in a relationship that you were in, like you only look back on the shitty parts of it.
Or or like a job you worked. Well, it's like, there must have been some good parts to it.
Yeah, otherwise you wouldn't have stuck around for as long as you did for years on it.
So, I mean, let's talk about the lineup of the panel for a bit. There's you obviously there on sort of being the color man. There's Corey. There's Corey who's like the main analyst. He's like he's
the Mike A of the group.
He really is. He is the professor. He is the biggest wrestling fan and historian I know.
He knows the stuff that I think that I know, but I have it all wrong usually.
Yeah, he's definitely the brains. You definitely bring the humor. Chad also brings like he brings like sort of like the average Joe kind of view to it. Like
that's a unique, necessary perspective to have on a panel as like a neutral.
Yeah, like I mean, he watches and he's been a big fan for years, but he doesn't necessarily like follow the internet wrestling community, I guess, as far as that goes.
Most people don't. So that's the average, like you said, like average Joe wrestling watcher. Not everybody's reading up on.
Right. I mean, that being said, of course, he's smart to the business. I mean, he's an intelligent guy, when it comes to it. So he's able to look at it objectively like that. But and then of course, Jen, who's also another big wrestling fanatic who I've managed to finally get her in on this. I've been wanting to get her in on it from day one. I mean, she's obviously a hugely passionate wrestling fan. I did an interview with her a couple episodes ago, and she actually worked for TNA for many years. Oh,
it's always super awesome to have a female perspective too, because it's pretty rare.
Oh yeah,
for whatever reason, like I don't know, girls that are just like passionate about it to like talk about it.
Well, I mean, it's such a testosterone fueled guy thing.
Not lately, man. Like Total Divas and all that stuff is sucking in a bigger female audience than it used to. And
with being on the E network and all that stuff. So it does seem like they are trying to reach out to that demographic, which is smart.
You imagine a Total Divas with like Fabulous Moolah and Sensational Sherry back in the '80s.
I want to. I would love to see that show actually.
Miss Elizabeth, man. Oh, I love Miss Elizabeth.
Wendy Richter.
Miss Elizabeth was my first
Yeah.
Like celebrity crush or whatever you
Of
call
course.
it.
She was
Oh, I was
gorgeous.
in love with her.
Yeah. Yeah, I just see like Wendy Richter hanging out with Cyndi Lauper the whole time.
I don't know. Like I started watching it when it first came on because a girl I was dating at the time was interested in it, and it was shot in Tampa and stuff. And there's certain cool little, but it gets too much. It's like this is fake. You know this is fake, right?
Oh yeah, it's
I found myself saying that to her. She's like,
right.
"We watch Raw every week, which is fake as hell." I'm like, no, it's not. I hate that word fake, man. It summarizes things too much.
It's like, I mean, that's like to me, that's like watching, the Avengers and be like, that's fake, right?
Yeah, no guy could ever stop a plane with his hand, right? Like
Come
Hulk
on.
just did.
Come on, Chris Hemsworth doesn't really have a hammer that lights up and commands lightning.
Like wrestling, you're supposed to suspend your disbelief like you would be watching Jurassic Park or Batman or whatever.
Right.
And some people don't know how to do that, man. They get to a certain age where like, man, I'm not watching this fake shit. I'll watch UFC if I want to see, violence. I don't know why people just have to watch violence for amusement, but I've been doing it since I was 6.
It's just a different thing. I mean, that is a legitimate, sport, legitimate competition there.
I don't know. It's like, anything else, any kind of movie that's rated R, it's scripted violence. It's like, it's not, it's like magic. And I hate having to explain it to people. We're like, what, it's fake, but you watch it still anyway? Like, yeah, it's like being in this little...
It's a show.
club.
It's entertainment.
Nobody knows. We know, but kayfabe.
Right.
Well, that was the interesting aspect of, dude, there were certain things when I worked as a referee that I never had any idea how they did it. I'm not going to like sit here and expose secrets or whatever, but like,
well, I mean,
I never knew how in a battle royal, how does everybody know when to go out? I got to see it mapped out, and I was like, that's awesome. Like, I had no idea. One of those things. So,
well, also
for the whole purpose of learning alone, I learned so much being there from those dudes like Steve Kern.
That is how did that all happen? By the way, like, I mean, like when, take us through like sort of the how you got to that point.
Right on. It's an interesting timeline. So around like, I want to say 98. My mom worked at this doctor's office, and this guy started coming to her. Actually, it was probably earlier than that because I was like 16. So I would say like 96. John Laurinaitis started coming into my mom's doctor's office.
Okay.
The great Johnny Ace, by the way.
Mr. Excitement.
Yeah, so I don't know. My mom came home one day and was like, hey, this guy came into our office today, says he's a wrestler. His name's Johnny Ace. I was like, do you know him? I was like, yeah. And I grabbed this book where I had a picture of him with the bushwhackers. They're called the sheep herders.
Mm-hmm.
And she brought the book in, and he signed it, gave it back. So, like, I don't know. It opened up this kind of like friendship, relationship between herself and him and myself. And he started getting me tickets. So whenever Raw would come to town, like almost every year.
Yeah.
Comp tickets, man. And then Nitro, a bunch of Raws. And then one of the ones you and I went to.
That's right. I remember that.
2007. He hooked it up with tickets, I think. And I texted him, called him something, emailed him, I'm not sure. Hey man, just wanted to drop you a quick line and thank you, and was wondering if there's any kind of like job opportunities open for like road crew, because I've worked on tours before as like drum tech, guitar tech, stuff like that. So I just took the time. He called me. We had like a conversation on the phone where I got to just flat out ask him, and he's like, oh, I admire you for being like as bold enough to just. So he's like, how tall are you? And I was like 5'9". He's like, how much do you weigh? At the time it was like 185, 175, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, can you come down to our facility we just opened on Dale Mabry in Tampa?
Yeah.
And we could trust you to be a referee. And I was like, okay. Dude, like it happened so quickly. Just from one phone call, to just ask for an opportunity. I wasn't looking to be a referee, by the way. I was just looking to get my foot in the door. Turns out he told me referees, guys that put the rings together. So you come in, you'll learn some stuff. Eventually you'll take some bumps. I never got that far.
Right.
They just came down to, I lacked experience is what they told me. So they couldn't give me and they'd be crazy to give me a developmental deal based upon, I know nothing about being in a ring other than, I don't know. It was cool though, man. Like it was like, it was a paid tryout basically.
That's awesome.
They gave me 2 paychecks, and without even really it's so weird, man. Like, I don't want to say without even trying, but like, I received 2 paychecks from WWE like on accident or
Wow.
something. Like, it was also around the time, unfortunately. The first day I went there, I'm really specific with dates because I never forget. Was June 18th, 2007. So I kept going there for a week every day, and then June 25th rolls around, 2007, and everybody disappeared, and it was just very odd. You know, I was in the ring, kind of going over stuff with somebody back then, man. By the way, like, Kofi was there, Sheamus was there, Dolph Ziggler was there, the Bellas were there, Natalia, a bunch of guys that are on TV were all there, like Fandango. It's actually the first guy I ever refereed a match for.
Johnny
cool.
Curtis, yeah.
Yeah, and Heath Slater, Jack Swagger, like, list goes on and on. They've had a lot of success with guys from 2007. You know, at the same time, a lot of guys have come and gone, like Kizarny.
Oh, yeah.
Jensen. Some of those guys didn't pan out so well, but, you know, whatever. They got an awesome thing going now, man. I wish I would have been a part of it back in Orlando at the Performance Center.
Yeah.
I was part very, by the way, after June 2007, after I sent a text out it was a guy from ECW, Supernova, was running talent.
Yeah, Mike Bucci.
Yeah.
Also,
which was crazy, man.
Also known as Simon Dean.
I was texting back and forth with Simon Dean. Yeah, like, you know, trying not to bark out. But you know, he gives me the address, and then June 26th, 2007, I texted him, like, and he's like, hey, man, today's probably not the day to be looking for a job. We'll hit you up the next time we're in town or something like that. And I was just like so deflated, man. And then at midnight, I turned 27 because of June 27th, 2007 was my 27th birthday.
Wow.
And that's when I found out I wasn't going to be working for WWE. A few months went by, and I noticed on the dirt sheets that 2 guys got released. One of them was a ref. I'd always I keep up on whatever. Like, I go to wrestling headlines / it's like lordsofpain.net. I've been going there since like 97, 98. I always get like the best little blurbs to read, and I saw that a referee was released, and then I sent another email to John Laurinaitis, and came through again, man. He sent me back to FCW for a few more weeks, and that's that, man. That's how that goes.
So, so the referee that was released. So you were basically reading about yourself on the thing.
Oh no, I guess that got misconstrued. When I saw a referee had been released, I hit him up for work, kind of like.
Okay.
Referee kind of thing, and he's like, "Yeah, how tall are you?" And like, he'd been a few months, he forgot, and I had something about, you know, I'll always support WWE no matter what, because there was a lot of people talking shit at that time on the news, Mark Marrow and people going running down the list.
Yeah, for just to give a little context, this was during the Chris Benoit tragedy.
Yeah, we don't like to talk about it. One of those things.
We can.
It happened. Yeah, it happened. The timing was unbelievable, man. And I was born on the 27th of June. I don't know. I don't want to sound like a weirdo or nothing. I will. I always thought the number 27 has, like, not haunted me, but it appears in my life. So for some reason I thought I was going to die at the age of 27. So I was super freaked out about 27. Like Kurt Cobain. Thought I was a rock star, I guess.
Right.
I was a kid. It turns out I'm not a rock star because I'm 35, by the way, still kicking.
Right. Oh.
Yeah. So there was like this weird feeling I had surrounding my 27th birthday. Like, turns out that Benoit shit happened. And every year of my birthday since then, something fucked up happened.
Wait a minute. So the Benoit thing happened literally on your birthday?
25th.
Okay, but still really close.
Yeah, and I was at FCW that day.
Jesus.
And then the 26th, I get an email or a text from Mike Bucci saying that, you know, we can't give you whatever.
Yeah.
27th is my birthday. It's like, it's so close. And then the next year, 2008, George Carlin dies 5 days before my birthday.
Right.
Who was my favorite comedian ever.
Right.
Next year, 2009, 3 people die. Michael Jackson, Farrah Fawcett, Ed McMahon. And then as a bonus, the 28th of June, Billy Mays died. Which,
also a personal hero of yours, of course.
Yeah, totally. Billy Hay. And like, who doesn't love Ed McMahon?
Right. Come on. I mean, there's so many times where I'll see like a joke on Facebook or something, and I'll just post a YouTube clip of him saying "Hi-oh."
Yeah, and I don't know, man. I don't really want to go beyond that with the depressing aspects of my birthday.
I am curious though. I mean, you were still working there when it happened. Do you remember like what were people just really confused about the whole thing, or I mean, what do you remember?
Well, yeah, the day I was there, the day everybody found out. So there's just a lot of silence, man. A lot of just disbelief.
Right.
You know, I almost didn't believe. Nobody knew. We didn't know anything.
Yeah.
You know, anything. So it was just like I went home, WWE.com that day, of course, and pull it up, and it just says Benoit family found dead.
Right.
Like all of them. Like, what? What the fuck happened? Was it like carbon monoxide poisoning or something? Like, you know, it could be anything.
Yeah.
But, you know, the more details that came out, I think that's the day I got the text from Mike Bucci because they found out. It's just like, dude, I don't want to. You can edit this if you want.
No,
but like,
no,
but like
fine.
Benoit, like incident, and not to sound heartless, but like it cost me an opportunity at like, and I'm not being, you know, selfish about it. I realize it was a horrific incident, but it's like it also personally affected me.
Yeah.
And that I had a dream job within the grass, and that shit happened. And and the documentaries and stuff I started seeing after that, I saw this one the day I was sent home for the last time, not knowing, but I watched the documentary on CNN called Death Grip. It was about Dynamite Kid and Benoit and Vince McMahon, you know, all these people on it. And it kind of started to change my perception as to like, shouldn't I just enjoy this stuff, and do I need to be a part of it? Like, I don't know. And I'm not talking bad or down on it at all. Like, not everybody is a Chris Benoit, but there is a lot of loss and tragedy. Friends come and go. I made a lot of friends there. Most of them are gone. Guys I did, you know, I'm close with. And such a short amount of time, dude. I didn't know what I was doing. You know, even like stretching, warming up. I'm just looking at what Dolph Ziggler was doing back then. Like, this guy knows what he's doing. And some of those guys I kind of predicted. The guys that didn't make it, I was like, I kind of didn't think they would. The guys that did make it, like I knew had like TJ Wilson and like the Hart Dynasty guys. I was like, I knew they were going to be called up.
Yeah.
Sheamus had a good look about him, but I don't know. I didn't see him being what he is now. Like Mr. Money in the Bank, kind of crazy how they're pushing him. But
yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, but they were all putting in the hard work, and we were there 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. like every day, sweating, dude. No AC. Like the facility back then was just a shithole.
Yeah, it was a warehouse basically. Yeah.
And then one of the last few days I was there, they sent us all the posters that we started hanging up. I was helping hang those giant posters.
Yeah, I remember those.
And then Edge stopped in because he was looking to get back in the ring before I returned, and looked at me. I was the first guy that we're just standing in a circle, and he made like eye contact with me, like, you want to, and I was like, no, dude, I'm not a wrestler. Like, I almost went for it. Like, sure, yeah.
It's like, spear me, please, right now.
I'll lock up with Edge. Like, I know what the fuck I'm doing. Well, I mean, and then years later, I got the bug again. I wanted to try refereeing. I ran into Brian Knobs, of all people. We're both loud, drunk, obnoxious. Probably not surprising to somebody at like a Chili's. He gave me his number. He's like, yeah, dude, well, I'll work with referees, managers, whatever. And hooked up with him for a little while. And, you know, inevitably got like hurt somehow, and just kind of, that fizzled out, you know, like, I don't know if I should be, I'm not in exactly the best shape to be in the ring. You got to be limber and flexible. And I don't even know why. Like, why do I have to take bumps?
Well, I mean, I'm sure they would have like trained you and stuff like that, and you would have at least given like some sort of like.
And it felt like I was on Tough Enough because that guy Skid Marks was in there with me.
Yeah, Ryan Howe.
Yeah, I'm sure he doesn't appreciate being referred to as Skid Marks, but that's how I knew him, man. And he was a nice guy. And there was a couple guys in there.
Yeah, he's also a pretty good guitar player as well. I saw him on like TNA one time on Gut Check, and like. Say what?
And, yeah, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, it was like a gut check segment they were doing, and like he came out, he had like a rock star gimmick, and he was literally like playing guitar. Like,
actually, isn't he the dude that plays like every instrument or some shit like that? Like I remember him saying he plays like a bunch of instruments.
Something like that. He's like a
like
legit
musical, like virtuoso. Like
he's like a legit musician. He's like what they tried to make Van Hammer.
I was gonna say he's like the maestro.
Right.
The Stro. They should bring him back.
Right.
No,
they should form a band.
Some of the other guys that were in there were Garrett Bischoff.
Yeah.
Mike Knox stopped in there. I was locking up with Mike Knox. Dude, it's fucking like very surreal to be doing something like that and looking down upon yourself. Like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
Like Jim the Anvil Neidhart, all these guys.
And all this stuff you kind of stumbled into it, didn't you?
Yeah. Dude, I could not have planned this.
It's crazy. I mean, it's crazy what it's like to be in the right place at the right time and just meet the right person. And
yeah, and if you want to, like, that's the story of my life. It doesn't always, it's real easy for me to, like, rewrite history and be down on myself, but, like, there's some unbelievable shit that I didn't really, like, take pictures of or video of, you know, like, it's all in my head and nobody else can see it but me. There's a few pictures of me refereeing a Billy Kidman match, and, like, here's the other crazy thing, man. I worked a few shows.
Right.
At like, dude, I was like 3 days in. They had me work a show, and kids were coming up to me with the little autograph books and like, hey, I'm like, dude, you don't want me to sign this. And they're like, no, they wanted everybody to sign it. So like, in that little brief period, I was actually not a lot, you know, like 2 or 3, but that's crazy. Like I signed autographs for little kids. Yeah. I know what that felt like as a kid to be on the other end of that. Like, dude, I don't care. Let everybody sign my book. So that was super like meaningful to me, man. That's that kind of shit not a lot of people know, but I had little interactions and experiences like that made it like awesome. Like, oh man, to be recognized in an airport or something like that. I've spotted John Cena sitting alone before.
Right.
Weirdly enough, like it was 6 a.m. and there was nobody around. He was the champ at the time. Nobody cared.
Right.
I just brought over a magazine that I bought real quick and I was like, hey man, whatever. And they signed it, and Doug Basham was sitting next to him, was like, hey, you can sign it too, man. I know who you are.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Yeah, dude. And I have another weird, whatever you call it, ability of like, I see wrestlers all over Tampa Bay, no matter where. Sometimes I'm not even trying. Like I went to a Louis C.K. show. I saw Alicia Fox with Evan Bourne. I worked at Side Splitters for a few months.
Well, so many of them, you know, live in the area, and that was the weird thing.
I have any ability to just spot them.
Yeah.
Where it's like, so dude, is that Tugboat? And people will be like, yeah, it is Tugboat. And you go up, and sometimes I've asked them because I'm not sure. Like I saw Bushwhacker Luke at Walmart weeks ago, and I feel weird like approaching him, like, hey man, are you Bushwhacker? And he's like, yeah, mate. And I was like, oh my god, like the way he said, like, good day, mate, or whatever the fuck he said. It was like, that's unbelievable, man. I just talk to wrestlers all the time.
It's crazy. I lived in the Tampa Bay area for like 14 years. I never ran into anybody.
Really?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think one time I saw Hogan at the Olive Garden in Largo one time.
It started like the week I moved to Florida in '93. I was 13, and I was a huge wrestling fan at that time. But literally, dude, I walked down the street from my neighborhood, and I saw a guy with a mohawk mowing his lawn. And me being a wrestling fan, just sat there and stared for a few seconds, like, that guy looks like one of the Nasty Boys.
Right.
And some told me, yeah, one of the Nasty Boys lives. I spotted him mowing his lawn on a fucking tractor.
Right.
Like the first week in Florida. And from that point on, I've seen Hogan at the Countryside Mall, X-Pac at Circuit City where I used to work. Like I could go on, man. Yeah. Jericho used to come into the toy store I worked at and shit, like at Clearwater Mall. It's just, if you keep your eyes open and you live in Tampa Bay, they're out there. You'll see them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why I had such a hard time running into them. It's just...
Oh, and you can see Jimmy Hart every Thursday night at Hogan's Beach if you feel like weathering that storm.
Oh, God.
But, yeah, he's there every day. I've been there, and he's there. He works there. Jimmy Hart is an employee.
Of course he is.
Of course, right.
Well, why wouldn't he be?
Beer and Beefcake, and I don't know if Beefcake's a local guy anymore, but
Ed Leslie, yeah.
Talked a lot about Beefcake.
Say what?
Putting over Beefcake a lot tonight.
Solid. He's dedicated to him. I mean, even though he's still alive.
Yeah, dude. Booty Man's still kicking.
Yeah. Knock on wood.
The rails, baby. Off the rails.
Completely off the rails, which is par for the course. I mean, that's what we do. That's our thing.
What I do.
Why don't you tell me about? Why don't we talk music for a little bit? Tell me about the Schmelz. Now you play guitar for them?
Yeah. See all right. So the Schmelz is kind of a kayfabe thing, where we use fake names and stuff.
Right.
I don't care.
Well, I mean, let me rephrase that. There's a guy who plays guitar for the Schmelz. He looks a lot like you.
It's getting to be like a confusing Fozzy Moon Goose
right
situation, and it's cool to talk about the Schmelz, but it's almost like a pain in the ass. Like we're not even doing anything really, so it's like we do want to do a 20th anniversary show coming up.
Like, where did that even come from? Like, you know.
Yeah, we can start with. Yeah, let's start. You can edit that if you want.
Let's start from the beginning. I mean,
the origin of the Schmelz.
Yes.
So let's do that. So my brother and my brother's a drummer. I'm a guitar player, and I was not a good guitar player. It's like a year in at this time, where we met this other dude named Anthony. He was in another band. You know, mutual friend type situation. We started just messing around, wrote this song called Saved by the Bell about Kelly Kapowski, who we all loved.
Of course. Who did?
We wrote one song and then made our debut like the next night on stage with all of our other bands playing. Like, not a big deal, but it's just so much fun.
Was it like a high school kind of thing? Just a block party?
I was 14. Oh, where were we playing? No, we were playing at like this place in downtown St. Pete. It was like a coffee house.
Oh, okay.
Well, I was in this band called Fuzz where I played the drums because I played guitar and drum. I was better drummer than I was guitar player at this point.
Did you start off with drums or?
Yeah, I started playing drums when I was like 10 years old, like 1990.
Oh, okay.
That was when you're in like 4th, 5th grade. They make you choose an instrument. I was like seconds away from choosing saxophone. For whatever reason, like at a music store, and the guy told me how hard it is to play, and I was like, just give me those drumsticks and a practice pad.
Right.
Like my dad was a drummer, my brother was a drummer. My dad's a big jazz, Buddy Rich guy. My brother was a big, like Rush back in the time, like Dream Theater.
Nice.
Slaughter type guy, like twirling his sticks.
Yeah, Blas Elias.
Mullet in '93 too. My brother did.
Well,
we have the photos to prove it.
I mean, who didn't back then?
Interesting thing about Blas Elias, my brother grew up playing Slaughter songs and shit. I could verify that.
Right. That was the guy.
He ended up working with that dude years later in Vegas with Blue Man.
Yeah.
And so did Tim Herb Alexander, the drummer from Primus.
That's crazy.
So these dudes we grew up listening to, Primus and Slaughter, my brother ended up working with someday.
Yeah,
so my brother is a guy very, like, kind of stumbled into it type of thing.
Right.
But
your brother is an incredible drummer, and he worked with the Blue Man Group for many years, as did your buddy Anthony.
Well, yeah, Anthony is the singer for the Schmelz. He was one of the Blue Men for 15 years.
He was like one of the head Blue Men at one point.
Yeah. In Vegas, New York, I think he worked all of them. Boston, Chicago, like they went all over.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I mean that's a whole other segue from Schmelz to Blue Man.
Right, but still, I mean, the fact that you guys, even though it's like an occasional thing, it's still kind of like the same guys who were sort of in the band like 20 years later.
It's 20th anniversary, and obviously in 20 years we've done like 20 shows. It's not like they've all been, in our minds, amazing.
Right.
But it wasn't until our last shows we played at the Florida Music Festival in 2008 and 2009. And I forget which year it was, but we got our first bad review in a newspaper, which I think is hilarious.
Of course.
I've never actually thought of what we look like to people that don't know us. And that's what that show was. Every time we play a show, mostly it's friends and family. And
I've seen one of your shows.
Yeah, of people that know us and stuff. But at Florida Music Festival, where you're showcasing for, I don't know what we were doing there. Like, we were wasting everybody's time for about half an hour.
Like, they obviously weren't in on the joke.
On the main stage, by the way, on a Saturday night. Anthony pulled some strings, I believe.
God.
But afterwards we got I wish I could remember it word for word, man. I'll look it up and you can post it if you want.
I need to see it because it's like
it needs to be like on the back of our CD. Like the back, like a movie has like little quotes from Roger Ebert and such.
Right.
Their limp dick stabs at humor raped my soul or something along those lines.
That's
dude,
harsh.
I think you're taking it a little too seriously.
It's a little harsh when you're going into rape your soul territory.
Yeah, like, take it easy.
Right. Dial it down.
We're not Nickelback. We're just trying to be funny. I'm wearing a costume. We're all wearing costumes. Like, see, that's why there's a kayfabe aspect of.
Right. Well, I mean, for those listening to this, if anyone is still listening at this point, try to explain like what the schmelz is, like what the gimmick is, like try to explain what the band is.
All right. Well, I guess most people are wondering why we're called the Schmelz. So that's an interesting story too, because none of us have the last name of Schmelz.
Right. I don't know where the name came from.
Right on. So 3/5 of the band worked at KB Toys, in the Countryside and Clearwater Mall at a certain period of time. And I think that Christmas, the big item was the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers or something like that.
I mean, yeah, they were pretty huge back in the day.
95, 96, I want to say. So people would call in looking for a particular color Power Ranger. And so Anthony and my brother worked together, and they would answer the phone and start saying stuff like, no, we're out of Power Rangers, but we do have these new Schmelz Warriors. They just completely made up this fictional line of action figures.
Wow.
And would people, not many, obviously they got bored and whatever.
Right.
I wasn't there.
Right. I mean, they would have gotten fired had that continued.
Right. But it's like this weird thing they made up. And then around that time we started, actually the first time I met Anthony, he remembers this. We were in a studio. My brother was in a band called Tube Socks and they were recording. Yeah, they were awesome. Little punk band my brother was in for a while. Very uncharacteristic of him at the time. He was a big, like fluent, stylistic type of player. Not to be playing hard punk stuff, but anywho. So yeah, we're in the studio and Anthony's holding this guitar and I'm sitting next to him. And at one point he turns around and goes, "What?" And he hits me in the face with the end of the guitar, like really hard. He was so apologetic and so sorry. And somehow we started that band after that night. Like that was my first night meeting Anthony. He hit me in the face with the guitar and maybe he knocked some sense into me or something. I don't know.
Or
maybe knock it out of me.
Who knows? Come on, you set me up for that. No. Well, why don't you, to some of the listeners, why don't you describe what some of the Schmelz's songs are like?
Yeah, and so like it was 94. Our first song we ever wrote was just random lyrics that make no sense. It was called Boobs and Licorice because I like colors and pretty sure we all agreed that we all like boobs.
I mean, they're both really great things, so can't go wrong there.
Anyway, so yeah, at this point the Schmelz was just the three of us, me, my brother, and Anthony. Then we started recruiting more and more friends, and eventually we got Anthony's brother. So there's two sets of brothers in the band, and then there's this other dude who is he's almost like a brother. So it's like we all know each other no matter how much time has passed. We always like can act like like it's been yesterday since we last saw each other. It's just super close. So on stage that communicates as well, where we don't really have to we just know when a song needs to end or something like that. We don't do a lot of practicing.
Right.
There's like a certain improv aspect of it, like an element of not knowing what the hell is going to happen. It almost never goes according to plan.
Right, and that ends up being part of the joke.
And a running gag, a lot of people and the guys like to say, a lot of guys in the band like to say is like there should be a camera on me for most occasions because every time you look at me, I'm wearing a different wig, hat.
Right.
Shirt. I don't even know how it happens, man.
What is your name in the band?
Well, I'm named after the president, B. Rock Obama.
Nice. Have you had a few other names in there along the way?
No, surprisingly, we never really went big on names, and I don't know. I won't name any of the others.
Oh, okay.
Not sure what their name is at any
Gotcha.
given.
Well, I mean, because like I knew like the bass player was dressed up as Batman at one point. Anthony.
Yeah, but
but
it didn't tie in with anything.
No,
and,
just
Anthony's name was. I'll tell Anthony doesn't care. It's Rex Cocksmith.
yes,
That's his name.
yes.
My brother was Special K because his name's Kevin.
Right, and he would wear a kilt on stage.
I'm totally breaking kayfabe here and whatever.
Right.
Like the last show we played was 2009.
Right.
Maybe to motivate them to. We need to play, man. We need to get out there.
Okay, so it's definitely been a while, but yeah,
it's been a while.
I remember the Rex Cocksmith outfit. He had like a mink coat on.
The personification, the epitome of what a rock star should be.
It was amazing, and they sang songs like the Spocker.
Yeah, so that's the latest incarnation of the Schmelz. We started out doing one song, then two songs, then three songs, and one of our songs used to be this chick medley, we called it, where we just took a bunch of songs sung by chicks, like Alanis Morissette,
Nice.
The Cranberries, No Doubt, and that was my favorite part, because I was a big Weird Al fan. Weird Al always does these amazing medleys of songs.
The polka medleys. Yeah,
polkas are amazing. So that was kind of, not directly, but indirectly, wanting to do a medley, and I always did most of the arrangement of it. That was like my project, and I love doing it.
of course. Well,
you take a few songs by chicks, and you mangle the words to them, or you purposely change them. Some of them have been terrible. Like, I don't even want to get into specifics as the lyrics that they're funny to write and say, but then to think of the shit that we've said on stage is like, oh my God.
Sometimes the truth, like the actual lyrics, are just playing it straight is even funnier than something you can make up too.
And Anthony would try to sing Just a Girl, or to this day, since '94, every time we do a chick medley, and sorry for the spoilers or whatever, but it always ends with Zombie by the Cranberries. Because
Nice.
I don't know why.
Well, that's a great song.
A fun song to play, yeah, and we go ape shit crazy the second we start playing that song, because my brother counts it in with that.
Nice. That's like one of the heavier Cranberries songs.
That's like one of the funnest moments on stage, other than when we do our last song. We always do like dueling guitar solos, where one of us, last time I was on my back, I had blood capsules in my mouth, make everybody think I was bleeding because of
That's awesome.
wrestling. Got to add like a pro wrestling aspect. Everyone was horrified that I played the guitar with my teeth, and then I stood up and was bleeding from the mouth. Not realizing a lot of people thought it was real. Like,
oh my
shit.
God. That's great.
And then another show before that, I did some kind of backflip gimmick holding my guitar. Stood up, didn't realize there was a wall, a concrete wall, and looking in the mirror the other day, I still see like a scar, a bruise.
Wow.
That was 6 years ago, where I had a giant egg on my forehead.
You attempted a backflip?
I don't know what I was doing, man. I tested my guitar solos in the last song called Loaded and Ready. It's a big 80s rocker.
Nice.
Your type of shit, hair metal.
Love it.
With Sister, Quiet Riot.
Yeah.
Just party them.
Love it.
And then it just descends into chaos by the end of it. And it's like a 30, 40 minute chance to just be idiots on stage. We're not trying to be anything but
I remember when I saw you guys play, like you guys closed it with like almost like a boy band like number where you all got together, put down the instruments, and like had a choreographed dance number.
That's something we threw together real quick. The guys used to live out in Vegas for a while because they worked at the Blue Man show in Vegas.
Right.
And so we played a few shows out there, and Blas Elias actually came to one of them. It was awesome, like looking out in the audience, and he's there.
You guys, the Schmelz, actually played out in Vegas?
Yeah, like a little, again, it sounds pretty crazy. Like, oh, would you play a casino? Like, no, we played another like little coffee house. That's our thing. Though. As we go to coffee houses and we disrupt whatever the fuck people are talking about in there.
And
like,
you're the best. You say you're the best opening band in the world.
So well, though, because it's almost, people are looking around like, what the fuck is happening? Because we come out separately, by the way, much like pro wrestling, with
awesome.
entrances at the beginning.
Do you have entrance music?
I want to have, I want to have my own entrance music. We come out to the same song, but I would love to have like separate, whatever. It could happen. Next show, you never know.
Well, tell me about the boy band gimmick. Like, you come out and you guys have choreographed dance number. You also have like a backing track.
I wouldn't say choreographed. It's loosely choreographed. It's some of us. I think my gimmick is to pretend like I don't know what's going on. And I always do it reverse, opposite. And nobody told me to do that. I just thought it'd be funny to be the one guy that doesn't know what the fuck he's doing.
Do you actually know what's going on, though?
Never.
So you're not really pretending.
Hitting my head into a wall, that'll make sure I have no idea what's going on.
That's excellent.
Yeah, man. There's really no story. We wrote that song in like 5 minutes, recorded it in like 10 minutes.
What's the name of the song?
Love in You.
Nice.
Like, V-I-N, and then the letter U.
Perfect.
Really bad. We all recorded parts separately.
So good.
Mine was awful, but one take, just like, that's it. That's what going to be your thing.
Do you guys lip sync to the track?
Yeah, I don't want to ruin it for anybody here.
Spoilers. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the first time we did it was so perfect.
It's
One
amazing.
of those Final Tap moments is we were on stage in Vegas, and the CD skipped because it was a CD. And we couldn't have planned it any fucking better.
It's like Milli Vanilli.
And then we started it up again from the top. And the same point of the song, it went bit and cut out. And people went, oh, the whole place wanted to fucking hear it so badly. So then we came back to it later. Like, we did another song, and we came back to it, and then we finally got to do it. And, like, the amount of suspense and shit we built up for that was, like, completely unintentional.
Right.
But worked in our favor. Like, sometimes there's those little moments in our shows where it's like, holy fuck, did that really just happen?
Right, you were building up the hype.
And I think there's a pretty good payoff on it because we've since updated it, I believe. Since it first came out, we've made it a little more modern.
Oh, nice.
I don't know, like dubstep or nothing. I say modern, like I don't even know what's cool right now.
Right.
I try.
You kids with your Ataris and your Dan Fogelberg records.
your hula hoops and your Pac-Man video games.
I know. Come on.
The late great Ernest Borgnine. In basketball.
Good stuff.
But
yeah, so how is the so you've been are you still working at Side Splitters?
No, I've been gone from that place for a little over almost a year.
Right.
I worked there for a year. Oh man, I saw some great shit when I was there. I got to bring up Mick Foley.
Nice.
By, introducing him on the mic and threw in a little ad-libbed. He's a New York Times best-selling author. He's a 2-time WWF champ. People started cheering, like, loudly. And I was like, not that I take credit for that, but, like, it was cool to, like, get a crowd riled up and going. Like, he's a New York Times best-selling author, 2-time WWF champion, and WWE Hall of Famer, Mick Foley. Like,
nice.
Man, like, and then he's like, I don't know if you have the song Wreck. I'm like, yeah, I do.
The Mankind theme, yeah.
Wreck. He was thinking, and then I had to find this weird Christmas song that he needed to come out, and I played it too early at one point, because, like, as soon as I started talking about Mr. McMahon, like, all right. So I had to sit there and listen on the edge of my seat. Like, that was my job at Side Splitters, was, like, doing the sound booth type stuff. And
oh, cool.
Like, I also did, like, daytime, like, promotion stuff, and I don't know.
And you would announce the comics as they would come up?
Yeah. Announce, like, the upcoming shows, bring them up, introduce the host, because the host gets up, does, like, 10 minutes.
Oh, gotcha. I didn't know if you did any emceeing yourself or anything.
It sounds that way, but kind of just like the running the opening of the show type thing, and then I just sit there, and I would time the guys, I would light them. Like, Fluffy was there once, sold out every show. And
Gabriel Iglesias, yeah.
Yeah. It's cool to be, like, I saw so many comedians there. Like,
that's awesome.
I won't say for free. I got paid. So it's another thing I fell into, man, off Facebook. They were looking for, and I was like, I've gotten the calls in the past from them, and I was like, I think I could do it. I could handle that. Ended up being there for 2 years, and so now I've worked in music, wrestling, and comedy.
Yeah.
At one point there, and I wasn't really sure why. But, like, I'm starting to put together, like, ideas maybe for, like, podcasts or whatever.
Yeah,
comedy.
yeah. Well, I mean, I know you've gotten up on a few open mic nights and tried your hand at stand-up for a little bit. Is that something you're still interested in pursuing?
Well, I'll admit I've only done it. I only tried it once.
How did it go?
There's other instances where I bailed or whatever, but I mean, it went as good as you'd expect it to go. I like to think I went up there my first time and killed it, and the room was not really, like fumbled my way through 5 or 6 minutes and I think I got like 2 or 3 big laughs, and it's mostly by being, I was trying to be something I'm not as a comedian up there, trying to tell stories, but prearranged kind of, like I shouldn't plan too much what I'm going to say. I'm better to be spontaneous. And
well, it's one of those things. I mean, if it's the first time you're doing it, you can't expect to have it all figured out right away. So
I mean, it only took me 34 years or 35 years to build up the nerve.
Well,
I've had the idea for about 10 years in my head. I was like, I think that's something I'd like to try. I just never did.
Well, hey man, it's one of those things. It's never too late. Like, I mean, look at like Rodney Dangerfield. Like, he didn't really start doing his thing until like he was in his 40s or 50s.
Yeah, who's another one? Phyllis Diller was like 50 or 60 when she started. Like, I'm not putting myself in the same category as those people, and I know I'm nowhere close to being
and you're still
remotely acceptable as a comic.
No, I'm just saying, like, you're still a young guy. You still have plenty of time to work on your act and to do stuff. Yeah. And if that's something you want to do,
I mean, it's hard to say. It's tough, and not that I didn't know it would be, but it's tough in the aspect that you got to put in like time every night, like a pilot would, to get there. You got to put in hours on stage. Whether it's 5 minutes at a time, you got to drive here, do 5, usually not get paid because they're open mics.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's no different than like being in a band and like kind of paying your dues and cutting your teeth that way.
Sometimes you get paid to play. I mean, that's the thing about all 3 of the fields I've chosen in my life is all you struggle. Music, comedy, wrestling is a lot of traveling, a lot of loneliness, a lot of temptation, a lot of tragedy. There's a theme. I don't know if I'm attracted to it or whatever, but I don't even know where I was going with that.
No, but I mean, I know what you're saying, because if it does have a tendency to attract people with, I mean, I guess a lot of creative people, sometimes they bring a lot of baggage with them.
Yeah, for sure, man. And I don't mind, talking about any of that stuff either, if you want to get a serious episode of the Phoenix Report.
No, I mean, look, I mean, there's something about it. I know I myself, I mean, I've got my own issues that I struggle with depression and, self-esteem issues and stuff like that. I mean, I
was never aware of that. And I guess that's one of those things you can never tell with depression, much like in Benoit and several other cases.
Yeah.
I hate to mention him in the same, I'm trying to make a point.
He's not really someone I want to compare myself with, but
no, I'm not comparing.
But I mean,
comparing,
I'm
just saying, like, with depression, you can never see it. Like, you're the last guy in the world, I'd imagine. But like, I heard on one of your first podcasts, you said that you were bullied in high school and you struggled with clinical depression and stuff like that. And it's like, I think most of us have. We just don't really talk. And just so you know, it wasn't over being a wrestling fan. I wasn't tormented or made fun of because it was a secret. Nobody knew about it, right?
Right. No, I mean, that wasn't why I took a lot of crap. I was just a nerdy kid, and I was always the type of kid who was like very sensitive to like what people said. Like, I always had a hard time,
like school bus humor type stuff.
I guess. So basically, you were wondering how a guy like me, who appears to be, I mean, you've always described me as being a very positive person, and I'd like to think that I am, but I mean, I know that I certainly have my dark side, and I think you and I had like very similar experiences as far as like being bullied in school and being misunderstood and struggling with those feelings, and I think we maybe kind of process them a little bit differently. Like, I mean, I think I know that I tend to be the kind of person who tries to who probably tries to please more people than I probably should. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. Whereas I don't care about pleasing anybody other than myself for the most part.
And I guess, I mean, a lot of it I get from my parents who, like my dad would always tell me is like, hey, don't let other people determine the kind of person you're going to be. Don't let them determine how you act. And
that's good advice, man. That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, he's, and that's always easier said than done. But I've always looked to my parents and my family for like sort of that moral compass and everything. And I'm not saying you haven't, but I know, like, certainly I've tried to, sort of follow that example and at least tried to be a good person, because truthfully, I mean, I've never been the type of person to, I don't enjoy getting people mad. I don't take pleasure in people getting angry at what I say or at people, I'm not a very confrontational person. So I think, I mean, which I think other people may have taken advantage of at some point, because I'm a very trusting person. I don't assume that people are dishonest.
Right.
And, some people might take that a certain way, or either that, oh, this guy's weak, or the other way they might think, oh, this guy's conceited, or this guy thinks he's better than everybody or else.
Right.
And maybe, I guess it's just that sort of quote unquote nice guy syndrome,
Totally, man. And I've been on both sides where I've been bullied and I've done the bullying a little bit, know. It's all weird preteen, adolescent, like puberty shit. Like, some of it I'm embarrassed of, but,
Right.
I've kind of struggled with depression, but the thing about you that struck me was just like, you can never tell. And it doesn't mean anything like you're not, like a good person if you struggle with like clinical depression or you're bullied or whatever, man. Like, just to clarify.
You know what, man? I wish more people would kind of talk about those things a little more openly, because I think there is still a bit of a stigma attached to it.
Talk about kayfabe, man. That's one of the biggest kayfabe things there is.
Well, I mean, I think there's just such a stigma in our society about mental illness. And you look at kids who are going around shooting up schools or whatever the case may be, and it's like, if you're, if something's wrong with you physically, you go to a doctor. If you go to a doctor to get a physical checkup every year, it's like, why not, at least have somebody to talk to, and just, because everybody goes through stuff, and I think if people were, able to just kind of talk about their feelings a little bit more, or at least get a professional opinion. And I mean, I'm definitely, I know that I'm a big advocate for that in a way. I mean, at least, I wouldn't say advocate's the right word, but at least that's something that I kind of feel strongly about. I think people should be able to have that sort of dialogue a little bit more with professionals,
Unfortunately, every case is unique and different, where you don't know the motives or intentions behind any of these people, but there does seem to be that link of depression, having been bullied, and some of them being on those prescription medications and stuff, and it's a whole other political argument I don't want to get into. But
well, I mean, it's also just a human nature thing. I think kids naturally can be cruel on stuff. I don't think. But they need coping mechanisms, and no one really knows how. Like, I've had a lot of people in my life tell me, like, I don't know what to tell you, like when I'm in one of my funks or whatever. I think it goes two ways. I think you need to teach kids how to stand up for themselves and how to cope with that sort of thing. And on the other side of things, parents should be teaching their kids not to be dicks.
Yeah, dude, absolutely. I'm sure they're worse now than they ever were, but back in my day, we didn't. Oh God, like back when I was your age,
right?
We didn't have like the ability to text and harass 24/7. Like, these kids are probably facing it, man.
It's crazy, man. Like, I mean, because I remember when I was a kid, and that was just when, like, AOL was a thing, and, like, Instant Messenger. That was, like...
Dude, I'll admit, I got into AOL from WWF Magazine. They gave me the little 15-hour disc or whatever.
Right. Yeah, I remember those.
Free AOL for, whatever the heck that thing was. And
yeah, well, that was what we had back then.
That was my exposure to America Online, was WWF.
But it's
Yeah,
like even from then, like through like email and instant messenger, like I would get harassed from kids from my school, and it wasn't until I kind of moved away and did all that stuff.
Don't know how to, rather than confront it, you ignore it, but it eats at you inside.
It is,
more,
and it's
people don't know how much it affects you. And I mean, I don't know. That wasn't really my reason, like being bullied per se. But I know what it's like, and I know my acting like a class clown. I don't know if we got into this yet or not. Was like a deflection of getting attention off of me. I think most people say that.
I think that goes back to what we were talking about earlier about you look at a lot of comedians and people who use that as a way to deal with whatever they're going through inside. Or
all of them, dude. Having been around enough comics, maybe not all of them. Some of them are just happy, positive people, but a lot of them are struggling with weird divorce, you know.
Yeah, they're not always the happiest people, even though they like making people laugh.
They try to be, man. I get it. Like going to a different town, staying in a condo, hotel, wherever the club owner's putting you. You don't know anybody. You're just kind of shy.
Well, I mean, I think that's why a lot of guys like that, well, I mean, even as far back as like Richard Pryor and like Lenny Bruce, you know, they use, you know, drugs as like a coping mechanism, as like a way to self-medicate.
Yeah, man, like I mean, I'm not condoning it, but I understand the boredom, having been on tours and stuff where you're just sitting around like with nothing to do until showtime. Yeah. So they kind of get lost in that, not having anything to do, and people do everything for you too, whether you're a rock star, movie star. You know, people can give you stuff for free. Yeah. The other thing, there's a lot of guys I know, like Chris Farley, whatever, never had to pay for any drugs. They're just giving them to them, and that's, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you look at guys like that, or like guys who have taken their own life. You mentioned Robin, like a comics like Richard Jeni.
Yeah.
You know, it happens. You know, it's a sad thing. I think, you know, I think all the more reason why people shouldn't be afraid to talk about it. And I know that's kind of a big thing to say, and that's a lot easier said than done.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's kind of why we're talking about it now. It's like, it's not really a big deal to us. Like, you can ask about it, you can talk about it.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's, and we're not trying to bum anyone out who's listening. It's just, you know, it's a fact of life, and people go through it, and chances are, if you're not going through it, you might know someone who does. So, you know.
Totally.
Yeah. So it's just about, you know, kind of being there for your fellow man and being there for yourself, and, you know, knowing that every person out there is deserving of some measure of happiness. And
yeah, man. As much as I, you know, I'm always kind of preaching the hate vibe a little bit, but.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know that you don't really mean that.
Yeah, it's tongue in cheek, man. It's I'm very pro, like, humanity.
Yeah.
Like, working together, like, stop with the division and the different, dissecting everybody into different groups. Like, we're all human beings, and I've always been open-minded about, you know, anything new is presented to me. Like, I'll always give it some consideration before I you know, I'm not just a closed-minded type. Where if I feel like we're going to get political, we'll start dropping names like Donald Trump.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, you know, whatever about all that. I mean, I don't disagree with you there, but that's a whole nother discussion.
The only way I would vote for Donald Trump was if Vince McMahon was his vice president. Yeah, running mate.
That would be a very interesting. That'd be very good.
It's hard to vote against Vince.
Well, that would be a very good presidency for comedy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, too bad Jon Stewart's not on the Daily Show anymore, but hopefully he ends up in WWE. I'd like to see that. Like, he's the new Mean Gene Okerlund or something like that.
That'd be hilarious. He's probably as good on the mic as anybody out there.
I do not disagree with that statement.
I don't know. I mean, it's funny. I saw a clip of like David Letterman, you know, talking to like a crowd. He's like, well, you know, I've just decided, you know, to retire, and now Donald Trump goes and runs for president.
Seriously, man, it's like every comedian's dream is to have some crazy shit. But it also gets into like everybody's talking about it. It's a little hacky and.
Right.
Like the Kardashian jokes and Nickelback jokes.
It's like how many more, you know, it's almost too easy at this point.
Yeah, it's the low-hanging fruit is what they call it. It's just like everybody can see it.
Right.
Not like my more obscure references like Ico Pro and
Yes.
Fort Alfred Hayes. No, nobody knows what the hell I'm talking about. So,
Well, I do, and I think that's
just yeah,
important.
select few, and that's cool.
You know what?
Cool.
Screw it. Should we just go ahead and say what the deal with Lord Alfred Hayes is? I mean, okay.
Apparently, he's hung like an elk, is what I've heard. And
well, apparently,
not that I.
You see, kids, Lord Alfred Hayes was a professional wrestler and later a announcer.
I mostly know him as an announcer. I didn't see him wrestle. I don't know. I'm not going to say I want to go look it up now on YouTube.
Well, anyways, for those of you listening, Lord Alfred Hayes, he was a British professional wrestler and later, TV personality. Apparently, he had a reputation for, playing what they call a rib, a joke on other wrestlers. Apparently, backstage in the locker room, he had a penchant for taking out his dick and putting it in other guys' hands, just as a joke, to kind of sneak up on them. Is that about right?
I mean, yeah, and it seems strange that I would make mention of this man every week. But the thing was, I had no idea. Like, this is such a straight-laced looking British.
Yeah, he has this like very refined Oxfordian.
Yeah, and so that's the whole dynamic is thrown off like everything to me. Like the whole made a hole in the time-space continuum. There's
it's
a glitch.
Like, here you go, Jesse. Hold my tallywhacker.
It's just a funny thing. I wish somebody was able to film stuff like that. Cheerio.
Yes, exactly.
There's Vince McMahon who had a party back in the 80s, and we missed out on some seriously good footage if we had these iPhones and stuff back then.
One of the things I want to have you back for, and is like, I want to have like you, me, and Corey do like a commentary track for No Holds Barred.
Oh man, any of those early Hogan movies are open game for me, man. They're terribly awesome.
They are awesomely terrible. Either way.
Terrible. Yeah, either way.
Either way. Well, dude, this has been awesome. I mean, there are so many different things that you and I could talk about on this thing.
Yeah, we'll have to split it up into a multi-parter, so stay tuned.
But at least, I mean, now that we've like kind of established who you are and your background in FCW, your background in music, and you're still an aspiring comedian, I think, or at least I hope you're still going after it, or if that's something you want to do.
I can make no definitive statements as to what exactly the hell I'm going to do next, but I'm sure there'll be a comedy, music, wrestling influence somewhere, just because that's who I am, man. It's
Gotcha. Or I think you should think about going into podcasting for yourself, getting your own show.
I mean, yeah, like I don't know if there's a possibility of anybody else wanting to discuss those topics of a certain, I don't like to discuss all types of music per se,
right.
But a certain I don't know.
Yeah, or at least just even a forum to kind of express whatever's on your mind, and
that too, man. And have you done any video podcasting or just audio podcasting?
Like vlogging? Not really. Like, I mean, I do have a YouTube page, and that's mainly what I post these on. A lot of what I'll do, like, I'll be with the band, and like after practice, we'll like record a video and post it on our Facebook page.
Right.
And just create some little funny clips. I haven't really done too many like vlogging, just because it would just be.
I mean, I mainly want to be heard. I don't want to be seen. Right. Like, I don't have to be seen, basically. But
right.
Yeah, I'd like to voice my opinions on. And it seems a lot easier than typing it all out, having a typo or something get miscommunicated, and that seems to be where we are now. Is things get misinterpreted.
Right. Well, that's the thing about text-based stuff like Twitter and Facebook, is that there's not the nuance you hear in someone's voice.
We can launch into a whole. In fact, if you want to assemble another panel, I was thinking this whole Twitter social media aspect of what it's doing to the wrestling business, and there's a lot of stories now, like every week. But like I said, we could talk about a whole other. Just my experiences with social media, both positive and negative. It's just a crazy new dynamic to the professional wrestling industry, man.
I mean, just that's
getting a lot of people in trouble.
Yeah, I mean that's just the world we're living in now.
Yeah, and I don't know so much if it's them doing it or people just digging into, like, when you make it, when you're successful in anything, people want to bring you down. And that's the bad thing about making it to the top. Like Hogan is, they'll find something on you, like,
Yeah.
you know, whatever.
Yeah, it just means you need to be all the more careful.
And it means I will never work for World Wrestling Entertainment in this modern era. So I have to just come to terms with that fact.
All right. Well, I never say never.
Unless I'm not an on-screen personality, where I don't have to worry about being scrutinized in that manner. But I feel like
I think we might have to have an entire like podcast of your alter ego, Smart Mark McGillicuddy.
He's available.
Well,
I'll send him a text, see if he wants to stop on by.
For those of you who don't know, I think Brian has like gone to wrestling events and worn this like incredibly loud, like crushed blue velvet blazer.
WrestleMania, I wore that too.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, you and I went to WrestleMania 24 together, by the way, in Orlando.
Yep, in Orlando, and we've actually watched 3 consecutive WrestleManias from when I met you. We watched 23, 24, and 25 with a bunch of your friends, I think, each year. So for a little while there, WrestleMania was cool again. Now it's on the network, and people can just watch it in their bed, in their underwear, and not leave the house.
Right.
Again, a whole other topic for a whole other day.
That's how you and I are doing it next year.
Only
all right, man. Well, on that note, I guess we should probably start wrapping it up here. But do you want to tell the folks where they can find you on Twitter?
Well, yeah, my name is my handle, whatever you call it. I'm new to it. At Brain Colony, which is a variation of my name. But also, I think if you just type in my name, Brian Connolly, spelled the same way as, if you do type in my name, you'll find a lot of tribute sites to the band The Sweet, because the singer of that band's name was Brian Connolly.
Right,
yeah. He wrote Ballroom
So
Blitz.
basically they want to find you, in case you didn't hear that. That's at Brain Colony.
Not Brian Connolly. So a little confusing, but that's how I am.
Sort of a play on words, as it were.
Yes.
Well, anyways, man, any final thoughts before we sign off here?
This is like Jerry Springer's wrap up there.
Yeah. What did we all learn today?
Yeah, which is Vince McMahon's favorite current celebrity is Jerry Springer.
Oh, of course it would be. Why not?
Yeah, I don't know, man. We've covered so much today. We've both grown as individuals, as human beings.
No, we haven't.
We talked about Lord Alfred Hayes' dick for a while there.
We've really.
No, I really don't think we have. I'm putting on a front.
Exactly. We've really learned nothing of value, and I think everyone listening to this has become stupider for it. But that's,
and no one's listening to this to learn shit. Right. I hope.
I mean, if anyone is listening, please like tweet us with something, just because like I want to meet you, because
yeah, for real.
Just be like, what is it like? Like, why would you do this to yourself?
Put me over on Twitter.
Solid.
Clean in the middle.
Pin me, pay me, shut the F up.
Legit. We're gonna pop the crowd huge. I could talk in Carney all night, but
all right, Kizay Fizay bit, Brian.
Keep it for the Fizex.
All right.
Physinex.
Yes. I love it. Brian Connolly, you are the Bobby Heenan to my Gorilla Monsoon, and I love you for that.
Thank you, sir. Wow, you said you love me.
I do. I do. We're men, and we can say that to each other.
No homo. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No.
Good night and good luck.
Say what?
Good night and good luck.
Thank you. It's like an Edward R. Murrow sign off. That's perfect. All right, man. Hey, thanks again. Seriously though, thanks again for doing this. This has been funny, and I'm sure we'll have you back for something. I don't know what.
Yeah, I look forward to being on the show again. Don't forget my number.
All right. Well, you didn't give your number.
Oh, you wanted me to give out my number?
No, don't give out your phone number.
Open to anybody just calling me, texting me.
I mean, email me after the show.
All right, cool.
Thanks again to my buddy Brian Connolly for sharing a few laughs, sharing a few personal things as well. I mean, obviously our our conversation went in all kinds of different directions, as it usually does. But we had some funny things to talk about. We had some serious things to talk about, and even if you're not a wrestling fan, hopefully you got some entertainment out of it. I know a lot of it was like 90% wrestling based, but yeah, he's a funny guy. He's a very talented guy, and I hope that he does decide to pursue either podcasting or comedy or both, because he's just a really talented guy, and I think he's just one of those guys where I think he's just a little nervous to do stuff like that that'll put him out there like that. I think he's just one of these guys. Sometimes he's his own worst enemy, but yeah, I mean he's one of those guys. He could do anything he puts his mind to. And I really believe that. So I'm glad that he's on here and that he's been a part of my show for a while. I was very glad to have him on. As far as some upcoming events, Vertebreaker will be playing on Saturday, October 17th at the Boondocks with Seven Stone Riot, Detached, Emerged, and Best Supporting Actor. The show will be sponsored by Blind Anxiety Entertainment. Go back and listen to the James Cripps episode if you haven't already. It was episode 12. Really great episode there. The week after that will be Saturday, October 24th. We will be at the Haven in Winter Park, which is just outside of Orlando. We will be there with Ghost in the Attic, Vilify, and several other bands, including Mink Mob, Stonebone, Only You, Sweet Oblique, Fighting the Silence, and Flakeskate. And we will have. I'll definitely be posting links to the tickets that you can buy online for that event. And that will be presented by Breakout Artist Management Group. Definitely make sure you check out that show. We haven't played at the Haven in Orlando in a long time, so we are really looking forward to getting back in there. That's it for this week. Make sure you check out the Central Florida local rock documentary that Alicorp Productions is putting us on, along with Murderfly, Traverser, Soul Switch, and Mechanism. That should be just an incredible documentary, and I think he's still accepting some crowdfunding donations on there. So go to the website alicour.com. That's ALIKOUR and .com, of course. And I will definitely post a link to that in the description. And make sure you follow me on Twitter at JackXConnor. Like me on Facebook at www.facebook.com/JackConnorMusic. Also, feel free to check out the band at www.vertebreaker.net. Make sure you buy our EP on iTunes and cdbaby.com or wherever else music is sold online. I believe we're on Amazon MP3 as well. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, make sure you email me at jackconnorpodcast@gmail.com or tweet me with the hashtag Phoenix Report. And if you're listening to this on YouTube or iTunes, which I believe we are up on iTunes by now, make sure you subscribe, leave a comment, and go back and listen to all the other episodes. Thank you guys for listening. This has been the Phoenix Report with Jack Connor on the twobadbrains.com.